Hi, my name is Mr. Chonya. Welcome to my study room. Today we are solving essay question 3 of the 2024 WASSCE Core or General Mathematics paper written by Ghana. And it reads that a man travels 4 kilometers from a point E on a bearing of 135 degrees to F. He continues 13 kilometers on a bearing of 45 degrees to G. A. Illustrate the information in a diagram. B. Find I correct two significant figures. The distance or the magnitude e.g. II, the bearing of G from E. And as usual, we'll first start by identifying some key facts from this problem that can help us solve the problem easily. And the first thing is that the man traveled 4 kilometers from the point E, and the bearing of that travel is 135 degrees to F. And also he continues 13 kilometers on a bearing of 45 degrees or 045. We have 045 because bearing is written in 3 digits. So if you have 2 digits, you bring 0 before the number. Okay. Some of the key facts we have to identify is that bearing is measured in clockwise direction, okay, from the true or geographical north. That's the first point we need to remember. Then another point we need to remember is that when illustrating the information in bearing on a diagram, just as the problem A answers to, we have to always remember that the starting point, where you are starting from, is the point that comes after the word from. So that's another thing we need to remember. So for instance, this problem says that the man traveled 4 kilometers from a point E. It means that our initial starting point is E. So give me a second. Let me sketch the diagram quickly, and then I'll explain from there. As I said earlier, we start from the point which comes after the from. So E here is the starting point, and the question said the person traveled on a bearing of 135 degrees. So I said earlier that bearing is a clockwise direction from the true north. So that means from here, the north here, all the way to this line is 135 degrees. And that means that this small angle here is 45 degrees. Since from the north to the east is 90 degrees. And then that means that here will also be 45 degrees, since the two of them are alternate interior angles. And then this is 4 kilometers, and this is 13 kilometers from F to G. And then this is also 45 degrees according to this part of the problem. The 4 kilometers and the 13 kilometers should at least be proportionate, okay? So for example, you have to try for the FG to be approximately 3 times the EF, right? So that is what I did. This part answers the A part of the problem, which is for us to illustrate the information in a diagram. So a man travels 4 kilometers from the point E. So E is the starting point on a bearing of 135 degrees to F. And then he continues 13 kilometers on a bearing of 45 degrees to G. So this is our diagram. Now let's go to the B part of the problem, which asks us to find correct to two significant figures, the length EG. So this is the length EG, and if we decide to call it X, okay, then the easiest way to solve this problem is to come back to the diagram. And when we look at the diagram, this part will also be 45 degrees since every quadrant is 90 degrees. So it means that the whole of this angle here is 90 degrees, right? So if that is 90 degrees, then it means that triangle EFG is a right triangle, or as some will say, a right angle triangle. And that means that we can use the Pythagorean theory to solve this problem. And that means this part of the triangle is the hypotenuse, since that is the side that is directly facing the right angle, or the longest side of it. And if you remember the Pythagorean theorem, I know you remember that the square of the longest side equals the sum of squares of the other two sides. So that will be 4 squared plus 13 squared. Okay. And then taking the square root of both sides, you're going to have x equals the square root of 4 squared is 16 plus 13 squared is 169. And then solving this further, we're going to have x to be equal to the square root of, let's work that on our calculator. So 16 plus 169 equals 185. So that means x is equal to square root of 185. And now we take the square root of the answer. Square root of answer is square root of 185. Then SD gives us 13.6015. Let me write that. 13.6015. But then we come back to this part of the question. We say we should write an answer to two significant figures. And that means x will be equal to 14 kilometers. That is to two significant figures, because the next number is 6 or more than 4. So we run it up to 14 kilometers. That is the first part of B. So let me make here I. Now let's go to I. The bearing of G from E. Again, this time our starting point is the point that comes after the from. So we are talking about E. G from E, that means we are calculating here, since our bearing is in clockwise direction. So this is the angle we are solving for. And to be able to solve this, we must definitely come back to the diagram. Since we know the whole of this angle here to be 135, if we calculate this angle here and we subtract it from 135, what is left will give us the unknown angle here. Let me call it y. That will give us y, the angle y. Okay. So now let's go back and calculate this angle, which let me call theta here. And since this is a right triangle, we'll use the trig ratios to solve for theta. And since this side and this side have been given in the question, I would like to use them. So the 13 is opposite theta and the 4 kilometers is adjacent. So that means that I'm going to use tan out of SOHCAHTOA, right? Good. So this is opposite and this is adjacent. Because of that, tan will be the best ratio for this. So that means I'm going to have tan theta equals opposite is 13 over 4. And taking the tan inverse of both sides, theta will be equal to tan inverse of 13 over 4. And that means theta will be equal to, let's check tan inverse of 13 over 4. So shift tan, let me use fraction. So 13 over 4. Remove the cursor forward and close it. That's 72.8973. So 72.8973. And this is actually an approximation. So let me use the approximation sign instead of equal to. and that is theta. So I explained earlier that y will be equal to 135 minus theta, right? Good. So that's just what we're doing. So y will be equal to 135 minus 72.8973. So 135 minus answer, and that gives us 62.1027. 62.1027. And again, two significant figures will be 62 degrees. So the bearing of J from E is 62 degrees, and this is two significant figures. And this is where we end the lesson for today. I hope this lesson has been of help to you. If yes, then why not consider subscribing to this channel for more videos like this. Till we meet again in my study room. Bye bye.